Hello and welcome to Quest Recapped. Today, we will be going through the 2004 animated superhero film, The Incredibles. The movie begins in a futuristic version of the 1960s, where we see a superhero named Bob, popularly known as the Incredible. One day, on his way to his wedding, Bob learns of a thief fleeing, so he converts his car into a supercar and chases the criminal. Moments after, he is approached by an old woman who requests his help in rescuing the cat from the treetop. So Bob unroots the entire tree to rescue the cat, and thankfully, the thief arrives at the same place. So, he throws the same tree at the thief's car, causing it to come to a halt. Next, the cops thank Bob for his help, and as he is leaving, he hears about a robbery and decides to go there. In the car, he meets a little boy named Buddy, who introduces himself as Incrediboy and wishes to accompany the superhero on his mission. However, Bob refuses to take the child with him, throwing him out of the car and driving away. Sometime later, Bob captures the robber, but to his surprise, the robber points a gun at him. Just then, another superhuman named Helen, who is known as Elastigirl, arrives and uses her elastic hands to knock out the thief. After that, Bob sees someone jumping from a building to end their own life. So, he rushes towards the person and saves him with a catch. However, he then hears something beeping, and while looking for the source of the sound, a bomb bursts in his face. It turns out that a supervillain named Bomb Voyage is plundering the area. Meanwhile, Buddy again appears on the scene and expresses his willingness to help the superhero. Bob asks the child to go home, but Buddy refuses to listen and runs to call the police. However, the boy is unaware that Bomb Voyage has connected a bomb to his cape. And as a result, Bob must now release Voyage to save Buddy. Due to this, Bob is angry at the boy for meddling in his affairs and had the police take him home and report his actions to his mother. Following this, Bob rushes to the church to get married, and we see that he is marrying none other than Helen, the Elastigirl. Their wedding is also attended by their best friend Lucius, who is also a superhero known as Frozone. However, days later, Bob is sued by the man he saved earlier for sabotaging his attempt to end his own life, while the victims of the railway rescue are suing for their injuries. These cases force citizens throughout the world to sue superhumans for the collateral damage and negligence caused by their heroes, costing the government millions of dollars. Soon after, the government releases superhumans of accountability for past actions in exchange for an agreement to never be heroes again. The scene then shifts to 15 years later, where Bob and Helen are now living an average suburban life. They have 3 children: Violet, who has invisibility powers, Dash, who has super speed powers, and their infant son Jack, whose superpower is unknown to the family. Bob is fed up with the monotony of his job as a claims adjuster for a shady insurance business, and he secretly helps deserving clients find loopholes to receive compensation. He misses his superhero days and sometimes sneaks out at night as a masked vigilante with his lifelong best friend, Lucius. One day, Bob and Lucius learn that another former superhero named Gazerbeam is having difficulty transitioning to regular life like Bob, and has gone missing now. The two then go to save victims from a burning building, but the heat is too strong for Lucius to put out with his freezing power. They accidentally enter a nearby jewelry store, where the security guard believes they are criminals. Lucius then freezes him with water from a nearby dispenser, and the two escape from there. Later, Helen finds out about this and scolds Bob for his vigilance, expressing her displeasure that he is putting their family in danger. Bob wants to return to his heroic days, while Helen is anxious about keeping the family together and not having to start over by hiding in a new location. The following day, Bob's boss scolds him for helping customers in discovering a loophole in their insurance coverage. Having had enough of the boss's harsh attitude, Bob loses his temper and throws him outside of the office, severely wounding him. Normally, the government agent and Bob's old friend Rick Dicker would cover up such an incident by paying to keep the company quiet, moving his family, and wiping the memory of the incident. However, because it is too expensive for the government, Dicker says he can no longer help Bob. Before leaving, Dicker offers to help Bob one last time for old time's sake, but Bob replies that he can handle it by himself. Later, when Bob gets home worrying about how to tell Helen, he finds a message from a scientist named Mirage. She explains to him that she works for a facility on a far-off island, and they require his help to take down an Omnidroid, which is an out-of-control AI-controlled robot that is terrorizing their laboratory. She further states that he will receive 3 times his present salary if he accepts the offer. Bob immediately accepts the job without much thought and informs Helen that he must leave town tomorrow for a business conference. The following day, Bob is transported overseas to a tropical island as Mr. Incredible. When he arrives, Mirage briefs him on how his operation will proceed and how he needs to control the Omnidroid to neutralize it without irreparably damaging it. Soon after Bob lands in the forest, the Omnidroid appears and shows itself to be a massive octopus-like droid. Even though Bob finds it difficult to fight it, he eventually succeeds by getting inside the robot and making it attack itself in an attempt to get to him. However, he is unaware that he is being observed by Mirage and a mysterious man who is impressed with him. Later, during his dinner with Mirage, Bob asks who her employer is, but she states that her boss prefers to remain anonymous. After that, Bob returns home and he enjoys his time happily with his family. He buys expensive stuff for the family and starts training to get back in good shape. However, the battle has somewhat damaged his super suit, so he takes it to its designer, Edna Mode, to fix it. Edna informs Bob that he cannot use a cape during the fight because many superheroes have died as a result of cape-related accidents in the past. So she designs a new red and yellow suit for him to replace his old blue and red suit. Assuming that his family has returned to the superhero business, Edna decides to design new suits for the entire family. 2 months later, Mirage calls Bob to take part in a new mission. Meanwhile, Helen overhears the call but is unaware of its context, so she begins to suspect an affair. When Bob arrives in the jungle, another Omnidroid confronts him that is larger and more powerful than the previous one. Then, a man appears and identifies himself as Syndrome, who turns out to be Buddy, the small child from 15 years ago. After being devastated by Mr. Incredible's continual rejection, Syndrome built a fortune in high-tech weaponry technology. He then developed the Omnidroid, a robot designed to exterminate superhumans. Syndrome then tosses Bob into a lake and tries to kill him with a tiny bomb. Bob, on the other hand, escapes by swimming down a cave, and Syndrome believes he is dead. Inside the cave, Bob is horrified to see his old friend Gazerbeam's decomposed body. Later that night, Bob sneaks into Syndrome's secret base and searches through his computer records. Then he learns that Syndrome has been discreetly planning Operation Kronos, which is a plot for mass genocide and has been successful thus far. He has been testing earlier Omnidroid replicas by assassinating superheroes, and he already has the plan to murder Helen. Suddenly, as Bob is browsing the data, Mirage discovers him, and Syndrome has him locked up. Meanwhile, after Helen spots a tear in Bob's outfit, she goes to Edna to get it fixed. Edna shows Helen every outfit she has made for the family, presuming she is aware of what Bob has been up to. When confused, Helen calls Bob's former office to check on him. She is shocked to find out that he was fired 2 months ago. After using Edna's suit tracking device, Helen discovers that Bob has traveled to a tropical distant island. She then immediately takes off in a fast jet for the island. However, she soon discovers that Violet and Dash have also sneaked with her, after leaving Jack at home with a babysitter. Meanwhile, Syndrome tortures Bob for information and conducts a missile attack on Helen's jet. Fortunately, Helen and the kids manage to escape unhurt and swim to the island. However, everyone on the island believes they are dead. Enraged with Syndrome for supposedly killing his family, Bob grabs Mirage and threatens to kill her unless Syndrome releases him. On the other hand, Syndrome is unconcerned about her and demands Bob go ahead. When Bob eventually lets her go, Syndrome calls him weak and pathetic. Later, Mirage is enraged at Syndrome for allowing her to die, but Syndrome claims he knew Bob couldn't hurt her. Disgusted, she angrily tells him to bet his own life when he gambles again and storms off, leaving Syndrome confused. Elsewhere, Helen and the kids camp in a cave overnight, and Helen leaves to find Bob, informing the kids that they must use their abilities in case of emergency. Later, in Syndrome's headquarters, a guilty Mirage secretly releases Bob just as Helen arrives. The 2 superheroes then hurry to their children, who are battling Syndrome's goons. The kids are caught in the bush, and Violet becomes invisible, while Dash runs as quickly as he can to escape. As Dash races the guards through the bush on foot, he discovers he can run on water. Soon after, the whole family is reunited, and a battle occurs in which the family works together to defeat their attackers. However, just then, Syndrome appears and captures the entire family. Later, Syndrome reveals to the family his evil plan, that he will become the hero he always wanted to be by pretending to save the world from his own invention. He then declares that he will sell superhero inventions so that everyone can have their own fake superpowers and mutant superhumans will be extinct. After that, he traps the Incredibles in an energy prison to complete Phase 3. However, soon after, Violet's force fields allow them to flee and they leave with a rocket for the city with Mirage's help. Meanwhile, in the city, Syndrome launches his most massive and powerful Omnidroid and pretends to confront it by remote controlling it and using his gadgets on it. However, the robot becomes too self-aware and outsmarts him, knocking Syndrome's remote out of his hands and shooting at his rocket boots with a laser gun. With his rocket boots out of control, Syndrome smashes into a building and is knocked unconscious. Soon after, the Incredibles and Frozone confront the robot and do everything they can to stop it from destroying the city. Bob then realizes that the only way to fight the Omnidroid is from inside, as he did the last time. Eventually, they manage to destroy the Omnidroid by crushing one of its claws through its power supply. When Syndrome awakens, he is envious that the Incredibles are now glorified by the public as superheroes, and he vows revenge. After they return home, the family discovers Syndrome with Jack. Apparently, Syndrome is kidnapping the baby intending to raise him as his sidekick in revenge for his future being snatched away. As Syndrome tries to fly up to his jet with his rocket boots, Jack shows his superpowers by transforming into fire, metal, and finally an imp-like monster. This causes Syndrome to drop the baby, but fortunately, Helen catches him. Syndrome then tries to depart, saying that he will abduct Jack again in the future. Having had enough of this madness, Bob decides to throw his sports car into the jet, and the resulting explosion pushes Syndrome backward. Now, Syndrome is killed when his cape is sucked into the jet turbine, causing the jet to explode. On the other hand, the Incredibles' house gets destroyed by the jet as it crashes to the ground, but the family survives due to Violet's force field. 3 months later, the family is much happier and we see them attending a race, in which Dash competes and carefully controls his super speed and comes second. Violet feels much more confident than before, and her crush asks her out on a date to the movies. As the family exits the sports complex, a new villain, the Underminer, rises from the ground and pledges war on the Earth. The film then concludes with the Incredibles family wearing superhero masks and preparing to save the day. We have come to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share this video. If you also have thoughts you intend to share, kindly leave them in the comment section. See you in the next video.